Imagine living in a time when you had to walk dozens of kilometers a day, carry heavy equipment, and prepare for possible battles at any time. It was against this backdrop that Roman soldiers emerged, one of the most famous military forces in history. Not only did they conquer territories, but they also left a cultural and military legacy that continues to fascinate generations. To understand the greatness of these men, we need to look at a fundamental factor: food. After all, there's no point in having excellent war strategies if the army is poorly nourished. On this journey, we'll explore in detail how these soldiers kept themselves strong and healthy. You'll discover how grains, such as wheat and barley, sustained entire legions, how meat was obtained, and why it played such an important role for the troops. You'll also learn about the importance of legumes, cheeses, and even fruit, which, although they weren't regular rations, played a strategic role. Finally, we'll see how elements such as salt, oil, wine, and water were managed in an ingenious and essential way for the survival of the army. But before we dive into this fascinating story, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our videos full of historical curiosities. Your participation is essential if we want to keep bringing you this kind of content. Did you know that a single food source could account for up to 75% of a Roman soldier's rations? Stay until the end, because we're going to reveal how wheat became the real fuel for the legions. The grain base of the Roman diet. Grains, especially wheat, were the backbone of the Roman diet. In many campaigns, large quantities of wheat were distributed to soldiers, who ground the grains and produced sturdy breads or cookies. These cookies, often called bucato in some regions of Roman antiquity, were durable and practical to take on long marches. In addition, there were periods when only wheat was available, which reinforces its relevance. Barley appeared as an emergency resource or even a military punishment. Because it was considered inferior, it was offered when wheat supplies ran low, or even to discipline troops who failed in a mission. The famous General Pompey, for example, surrounded opposing troops who, having no other way out, had to resort to barley in order to survive. This not only saved lives, but also reinforced the importance of good resource management. As well as being energizing, grains provided essential nutrients to keep soldiers in action for long periods. The high availability of this resource was a decisive factor in Rome's military expansion. Without the logistics of transporting and storing grain, campaigns such as Julius Caesar's in Gaul would not have been possible. Have you ever wondered how these strategies influenced historical conquests? Leave your like now so we can keep bringing you stories as interesting as this one. We've talked about grains, but we haven't told you how the soldiers got their much-needed dose of protein. Let's find out now. The importance of meat for the troops. Although grains were fundamental, meat was the main source of protein and calories. Roman troops used to obtain it by hunting locally, which often involved survival skills, tracking and cooperation between soldiers. In regions rich in wildlife, hunting not only satisfied hunger, but also provided a moment of battle training. After all, chasing an animal in unfamiliar terrain requires planning and collective effort. Another recurring practice was to confiscate domestic animals from the places they conquered or the areas they passed through. Although it sounds harsh, this tactic was common in times of war to supply the army. Salted pork, for example, was a real asset, as it was easy to preserve and transport over long distances. Octavian, later known as Augustus, would have resorted to this type of supply in remote campaigns, ensuring that his troops didn't stop for lack of food. Religious rituals also provided fresh meat. Before major battles, it was common to sacrifice animals to ask the gods for protection in a ritual known as suavetorilia. In addition to religious fervor, this generated an extra supply of protein. Meat therefore became not only a nutritional resource, but also a symbolic element that strengthened soldiers' morale. Did you already know about the spiritual side of Roman food? Tell us in the comments what you thought of it. If you think that only meat and grains built Roman strength, wait until you hear about the power of legumes in the lives of the legionaries. Pulses and their nutritional advantage. Beans, lentils and peas played a fundamental role in the Roman diet, contributing to dietary variety and, above all, to the supply of protein and fiber. In a huge army, dietary diversification was crucial to avoid nutritional deficiencies. This helped to keep the soldiers healthy and in good spirits on long journeys, as no one can fight on an empty stomach without adequate nutrients. Because they were more resistant to the weather and easier to store, these legumes were perfect for campaigns that lasted months or even years. In historical records, there is mention of legumes being carried in large quantities during crossings to distant regions. Although they didn't have the prestige of wheat or meat, they were indispensable for subsistence, as well as contributing to satiety. Legumes ensured greater metabolic balance in situations of continuous effort. Without these sources of protein, the Roman army would have had to rely almost exclusively on meat, which could have increased costs and storage logistics. Thus, beans, peas, and lentils appear as true silent heroes in the history of Roman campaigns. Did you enjoy learning more about the unsung heroes of Roman nutrition? Share the video so that more people can discover these surprising details. Now let's move on to a food that many people don't think was so important in Roman camps: cheese. The surprising role of cheese. Although there aren't many mentions of it in ancient works, cheese was essential to the legionnaires' diet. Made from cows', sheep's, or goat's milk, it offered essential proteins, fats, and minerals. What's more, because it was relatively light and easy to transport, it didn't degrade as quickly as some types of meat. Fossils of instruments such as milk squeezers and utensils found in archaeological sites indicate that cheese production took place within the camps themselves. Imagine the soldiers getting together at the end of the day to process the milk and produce this food. It was a collective task, which also helped maintain group cohesion. In many long campaigns, especially in mountainous regions, cheese served as a marching snack, guaranteeing quick and prolonged energy. It's no exaggeration to say that without this additional source of nutrients, many legions would have struggled to maintain the same strength in battle. Have you ever thought of cheese as military fuel? Leave a like if you were also surprised by this information. It's time to discuss a food that not many people associate with soldiers: fruit, and how it affected the daily routine in the army. Fruit, between luxury and survival. In ancient Rome, fruit was less abundant for a soldier's daily consumption, especially during extensive military campaigns. Even so, when the opportunity arose to pick or buy fruit in conquered regions, these items became a treat that boosted the morale of the troops. Even when dried, the fruit acted as a source of natural sugar, helping to replenish energy. There are reports of extreme situations in which generals, such as Philip Fick, in conflict against Rome in the Second Macedonian War, sought out figs to nourish soldiers in the midst of supply crises. These examples reinforce that, although it was not a fixed part of the rations, the fruit fulfilled a strategic function of survival and psychological relief, to keep morale high at critical times. Because they are perishable, fruit was not part of the standard combo of supplies, being more common in the form of direct purchases by soldiers or fortuitous finds along the way. Even so, their temporary presence added variety and nutrients to the diet, which could make a difference to the health of those who spent months or even years away from home. Did you imagine that fruit could be so important during critical times of war? Comment below with your thoughts on this survival strategy, how to purify water in an era without basic sanitation. Discover the posca, the ingenious solution found by the Romans. Wine and water, the life-saving combination. In the midst of so many marches and battles, keeping the water supply clean was a constant challenge. The Romans, however, had a simple and effective technique: mixing sour wine with water, creating a drink called posca. The vinegar present acted as a natural disinfectant, helping to eliminate bacteria and making the water safer to drink. As well as being healthy, posca contained antioxidants and vitamin C, which boosted the immune system. In various campaigns, reported by Julius Caesar, the logistics of finding reliable water sources was accompanied by the transportation of containers with sour wine to produce this essential mixture. Posca was despised by the Roman elite, but loved by the army for its ability to keep the troops hydrated and resilient. At times, the wine itself, albeit diluted, also served as a source of calories, helping to warm the body in cold regions. In any case, the simple act of boiling water or mixing it with vinegar and herbs was, in a way, a sanitary revolution. Without it, a large part of the army fell ill with waterborne diseases common at the time. Are you enjoying discovering these curiosities about Roman survival? Then share this video now and help others learn more about this war engineering. Now, if you think you've seen everything about Rome's secrets, get ready to understand how salt and olive oil boosted conquests. Salt and olive oil, preservation and taste. Two items that could not be missing from the Roman army were salt and olive oil. Salt made it possible to preserve meat and fish for long periods of time, ensuring that even in campaigns far from Roman territory there was food available. Historical documents describe the importance of large salt caravans, which were indispensable for preserving supplies. Olive oil, on the other hand, had multiple functions. As well as being a source of fat and calories, it was used to prepare food and even in some medical treatments. Reports from legionaries show that olive oil was also used in purification rituals and for personal care, such as keeping the skin protected from the cold. In the midst of the marches, salt and olive oil were an essential part of a list of provisions, known as the Siberia, which covered everything that was regularly distributed to the troops. If these elements were missing, morale would drop, as the taste and preservation of the food would be compromised. With them, the army marched confidently. Who would have thought that such basic spices would have an impact on such a grandiose expansion? Leave a like if you were also impressed by these flavorful logistics. Do you want to know how the soldiers organized themselves on a daily basis to cook and share supplies? Let's meet the Contubernium. The Contubernium and the division of tasks. The Contubernium was the smallest unit within a Roman legion, made up of around 8 soldiers who shared the same tent. They marched together, fought battles side by side, and, of course, cooked and ate together. This division fostered unity among the men, creating important bonds to maintain discipline and esprit de corps. Each Contubernium was responsible for its own rations and food preparation. While some fetched firewood and water, others ground grain or salted meat. This routine of daily tasks turned the camp into a veritable hub of culinary activity. Thus, even in the midst of the adversities of war, there was a certain stability and organization. Sharing meals generated a sense of camaraderie. After all, meals were not just a time for physical nourishment, but also for sharing stories and relieving stress. This social microcosm within the army was fundamental in shaping the success of the legions, because soldiers who trusted each other fought better. Were you surprised by the organizational structure of an army centuries ago? Leave a comment and Tell us what caught your attention the most. After learning so many details about food logistics, let's understand how it worked in prolonged campaigns and extreme situations. The challenges and adaptations of extensive campaigns. In protracted wars, such as Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul or Octavian's in distant regions, supply often became a colossal challenge. Supply routes extended into hostile territories, and interruptions in food shipments could completely demoralize troops. Strategists often had to plan weeks or months in advance to avoid starving the legions. It was in these situations that improvised solutions arose, such as the consumption of barley or exhaustive hunting in nearby forests. When there was an extreme shortage, the soldiers were forced to eat whatever was available, including wild animals that were not part of the common menu. This flexibility was a factor that partly explained Rome's ability to keep its armies on the march for so long. Historically, there have been cases where rival armies collapsed because they couldn't get enough supplies. The Romans, on the other hand, were better prepared, resisted, and even turned each new adversity into a logistical learning experience. This ensured that, even in crises, they kept cohesion and hunger under control. Can you imagine going through such hardship? Share this video with a friend who also loves history. Finally, let's reflect on what we can learn from this whole journey of taste, organization, and survival. A legacy of nutrition and strategy. The diet of the Roman army went far beyond simply satisfying hunger. It was a true strategic weapon, capable of guaranteeing morale, strength, and stability in the midst of battle. The way in which grains were transported and stored, the symbolic value of meat in rituals, the power of legumes, the versatility of cheese, and the clever use of salt, olive oil, and sour wine demonstrate the ingenuity of these people. Every detail, from the Contubernium to the great logistics of supply, contributed to Rome's ability to expand and keep distant territories under its control. When we look at these facts, we realize that Roman success was not limited to brute military force. There was also careful planning of essential resources such as food, which guaranteed the survival and disposition of the soldiers. If you enjoyed this trip back in time and want more fascinating stories, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for following us here, and we'll see you in the next chapter of our series on the Roman Empire. See you next time.